Hello again. Finally, I hope you're not tired of my voice. I've been trying to say everything that I'm thinking, try to connect it with everything because that's the instructions I've been given, and I sort of don't want to avoid showing the evidence that of that kind of the connections I'm making as I'm going along. A lot was learnt. So the last activity was the critical incident quiz. We'd only sort of run out of time, and I had to ask the teacher, can I have another 5 or 10 minutes with the students here, which she was quite happy to do, and probably would have allowed me to have more time had I asked at the beginning. So it was great that they had that time. I had to say, right, we have to stop the blog activity now and get into this activity. Some were still enjoying the blog, so it was hard to get them out of that and get them into this. The first thing I was saying was that this is anonymous, that this is there's no mark involved here, that the idea that this was for you more than for me. It's just to think about what you've learned through this whole session and to re-look at it again and reflect on what you had learnt tangibly from this session. Feel free to make honest answers because it's completely anonymous. So I was trying to set it up like that because I wanted the students to avoid trying to give me the right answer, which second language students can be tended to do. I'm not sure this activity was as effective as the last three activities because I'd already been able to, in a sense, see the results of what they had learned in the last three, that they were reflecting, that I was seeing by some of the stuff they were putting down on sheets, some of the comments they were making in the blogs, giving me an indication of how much they were actually reflecting through that kind of evidence. This evidence, it would be harder to know the extent of it. It was hard to know if they were giving, like someone once said, I'm unlikely to change anything about my note taking. Oh, no student said I'm unlikely to change anything in my note-taking method. So many students were saying, like 5 students said, I'll totally change everything about my approach. They had a multi-choice question, will you change everything, some things, or nothing? And 11 students said, I will make 1 or 2 minor changes. So based on that, I was surprised that there were 5 that say, well, I will totally change everything about my approach. Because that's transformative, really, and what I was trying to achieve for students who were coming in with a much lower level of note-taking, that those who had the really very rote style and limited note-taking ability would, through this reflection, have transformed, had something, had an incident had been able to be generated enough that they saw, oh no, they had a vision of a superior way of note-taking through the videos, through what they're having to do in practice, and through what they were seeing other students do, and through the dialogue that was suggested by Mesereau, through all those methods that they had started to challenge their underlying approach. So it was actually really quite encouraging and a positive feeling about it to see that kind of a comment. 11 students said they would make minor changes. I thought, well, at least they know what specific changes they need to make and can apply to those changes to their current method. And nobody said that they would choose, oh, I'd like to change anything about my note-taking method. But it was hard to know if that was, no one said that because they didn't want to give the wrong answer. But on the other hand, I think there's some indication there, enough indication that there had been some transformative learning going on even within that 15-minute session. So I think that also question 3, it says in some ways observing the specific what the students had really learned in the session was clearly gauged from the blog, more clearly from the blog comments, which is true. And that there were different answers coming out of question 1, And I purposely left question 1 open-ended, so that there were there was a blank, so they just had to write something about what they learned. It was encouraging to see that different people were writing different things in that blank, that they were not all the same, and so that the reflection actually caused people to reflect on themselves rather than in what they personally needed, rather than what I was trying to tell them to do. You must do this or you must do that. And that's a part of the approach that I was sort of reinforcing the whole time, that there's no right or wrong answer. You need to own it for yourself and decide for yourself what style you want to use and what was useful about the session or not useful about the session, and be honest about it. And so it's great to see that there were no prescriptive answers coming out here so much as quite personal answers towards that quite different. Each one is quite different. There's some similarities, but quite a lot of differences. It's quite pleasing to see. So from a positive feeling, I can say, well, the reinforcement during the session and training them, there's no right. The whole approach I used at the beginning to sort of bring myself down to their level prior to the session, meeting in the session, telling my story about the fact, even the prior session, that I'd made mistakes, that this was all about a journey. There's no right or wrong. You just need to make process in your learning skill. And then I'd see them in the next session. When I came to the next session, I was reinforcing this idea the whole time at the beginning of most of the activities. And it seemed to have started to work a little bit here. So I can feel positive that getting to know the students, breaking down those barriers, reinforcing the idea that learning is a process rather than just you have to have the right answer all the time, and was starting to actually work and build that into, I can say that associates with what I know from the past, but I can also validate that with the experience of what I'm seeing here, and appropriate the idea that you do need to get to know the students. You need to break down these kinds of things before good critical reflection can occur. What I could say in terms of negative about this one is simply that I ran out of time. There was not enough for this critical incident quiz. I think in some ways the critical incident had already happened prior to that. They already created a critical incident, and they wouldn't have seen this so much as critical incident analysis as much as if it had been done in a more fun way. I think this quiz could have been done in a more fun way to show it as kind of like an incident, and then to assess what actually happened or tell a story about what happened within that incident, somehow to other peers. So I think that this is kind of a stale way to reevaluate what was going on in the session. On the other hand, here they had to reevaluate again what they learnt, so hopefully they're reinforcing. But through that reevaluation, they were reinforcing what they did get out of the session, encouraged to be honest about it. And I really wanted to finish off with the idea of where I'm at, and it doesn't matter where you're at. If you're not going to intend to do note-taking through this, it's better that you write that in, because then at least you know what you're at. My goal was really professionally to let them specifically know what they needed to do to write good notes. As long as they knew that, it was up to them whether they applied that or not. But I was using critical reflection in order to know specifically what they can do, so that they weren't left in the dark about why one student is succeeding well and why they're not succeeding well, but they knew some skills to apply. And I know that it has to start with where the person's at, and for them to take it on board as their own. So what the data here shows is that there were definitely some things that were definitely working within the session, even though through all of it they were running out of time. Not enough time to get through was on my mind the whole time, and some of the last 20 minutes of the session. But I think I have to validate that, basically turn that obstructive feeling into a positive, that the experience showed that there was some data showing there's some very real learnings to come out of it, even if it wasn't perfect. And it would just be about honing the session, lengthening the session, considering how much time, splitting up perhaps the activities for this level, and said to my manager what would be best at different levels to run it shorter or longer. So I just want to end there. That how does this get back to my learning needs? That yes, I've learnt very real specific outcomes through this that I'm going to apply to the next workshop that I'm actually creating on academic integrity, and I might just share that in the last slide.